Hello everyone, I'm Saloni Khant from FDI and FPI, and today we are going to discuss the draft Foreign Investment Rules 2026, which are proposed to replace Foreign Exchange Management Not-Yet Instrument Rules 2019. In our annual budget for this year, our finance minister had announced that the NDI Rules framework, which governs the foreign investments which are being made in India, will be reviewed. And now they have issued or draft rules framework, which is open for public comments until 31st of August. But what is it that these rules bring? They bring in a more principle-based approach as compared to the lengthy prescriptive rules that we are seeing right now in the form of India rules, because this is proposed to be replaced by more principle-based rules which are very short and remove duplicity. That is, the FDI policy and the NDI rules contain a lot of provisions which are more or less the same. This duplicity is aimed to be removed for easier understanding of the regulatory framework. Let us have a closer look. Currently, the structure that we are seeing is that the Ministry of Finance provides the Indian rules, the RBI regulator, being the regulator for foreign exchange management, provides the mode of payment, that is how I'm receiving money, and the reporting requirements. The Ministry of Commerce and Industry is the ideal body to determine which sector should receive how much foreign investment, and they do so through an FDI policy. Now, what happens is the FDI policy is not enforceable by itself. It only comes out in the form of a press release. To become enforceable, in fact, the FDI policy circular press release specifically mentions that it becomes enforceable only when it becomes a part of the India rules. That is, the India rules can be in the same base as the FDI policy. This causes duplicity. Now, when I, as a foreign minister, am looking at what will be the legal framework governing my investments in India when I'm proposing to plan or to park my funds in? I see the NDI rules, I see the RBI's regulations, and I see the FDI policy. This all seems very complex. And that is exactly why the foreign investment rules, what they propose is that the FDI policy will become a part of the rules itself. Moreover, if we look at the structure of the foreign investment rules, they also include in Annexure 3 all the regulations and conditions from RBI regarding the foreign investment, and this acts as the repository of laws which I am required to refer to when I'm dealing with foreign investment in India. If we also look at the number of chapters, there are only 4 chapters and only 3 annexures as compared to 10 chapters and 11 schedules that we're seeing in the India rules right now. More or less, the substantial changes are limited, but there is more of elimination of duplicacy and more of realignment to make it easier to understand. If we know when these foreign investment rules become applicable, they become applicable when a person is resident outside India, makes a foreign investment equity or transfer of in an eligible investing entity. Now, this term eligible investing entity is not defined in the India rules, but more or less formed a part of the FDI policy, which is in present right now. The definition of equity also remains more or less the same, with an additional reference to the accounting standards applicable to that. But what comes in as a change is who bears the onus of compliance. Though currently what we've seen is that the Indian parties bear the onus of compliance. The Indian transfer or transferee, the Indian issuer is responsible. But now the foreign counterparts will also be held equally responsible. If we are looking at what is foreign investment in equity, if I am a person as in India, I can invest directly in India or I can invest indirectly through an Indian entity or another foreign entity. When I'm investing through an Indian entity, it is termed as foreign controlled entity, what we are seeing as downstream investments in the current India regulations, in the current India rules. When I look at the definition of foreign controlled entity, it must be controlled or owned by a person resident outside. and the meaning of control and ownership will be referred to as per the laws of incorporation applicable to that company, to that entity. So let us say if I am routing my investment through a company, the meaning of ownership and control will be as per Companies Act. If I'm making this investment through a person sitting outside India, for the meaning of ownership, I will check whether there is a beneficial holding of more than 50%. When I'm looking at control, I must see whether I have voting rights of 10% of more or more. This will bring in several actionables for me as a foreign investor today because there will be so many investments being routed through person that is outside India, which may amount to voting rights of 10% or more. Several entities are expected to be covered under these rules thereafter. If we are looking at the definition of FDI and FPI, let us say I want to invest in a listed company today. If my investment is up to 10%, that is, if it is less than 10%, it amounts to an FPI. If it is exceeding 10% or it is 10%, it becomes FDI. Again, if I want to invest in an unlisted company, it will be FDI, irrespective of the limit of my investment. What the change here is proposed is that this distinction between a listed company or an unlisted company is entirely extinguished. If I'm investing up to 10%, it is FPI. If I'm investing 10% or more, it is FDI. If I'm looking at the modes and conditions for foreign investment, the manner in which I'm acquiring or transferring money for the instruments, it more or less remains the same. But an interesting change that comes in here is the pricing guidelines. When I'm looking at the NDI rules, when I'm seeing that when I'm paying money from India to foreign, there is an upper cap on the amount that I'm paying. And when I'm receiving money from foreign country to India, there is a lower. But the draft foreign investment rules do not propose this upper cap or lower cap. They just provide the manner in which a fair market value can be determined. But is it that I will not be considering these fair market values as the upper cap or lower cap? That is not. In our view, this context should still be followed because the intention of the government still remains the same. That is controlling how much money is flowing out of India and how much money is coming into India, protecting India's interests at the foremost. If we are looking at the provision for gifts, this again is an important change. Right now, when I'm looking at the NDIs, I can see that for a natural person to make a gift to his relative under the Companies Act 2015, I'll have to seek prior approval of the RBI. There will be a limit on the number of securities that I can transfer, as well as there is a limit on the value I can transfer. Right now, this limit is set at 50,000 USD, but let us suppose I'm holding an investment on non-repaid basis and I'm proposing to transfer it as a gift on repaid basis. These conditions follow. The only condition that remains in the draft rules right now is that the limit of 50,000 USD is increased to the LRS limit. That is a liberalized remittance limit that is currently USD 2,50,000. The draft rules address only this specific situation in which the gift is being made, and they do not provide these conditions as of now. The FDI policy as an annexion is not published as of now, even in the draft rules. Once it becomes published, we will have more clarity on whether these conditions are entirely omitted or they might be included there. Then we are looking at the provisions for pledge, which again have a similar approach that the principles are written in the draft investment rules and the conditions per se might be retained in the FDI policy. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.